It wasn't until the next morning that I remembered it again. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in hand, scrolling absently through my phone while sunlight streamed weakly through the blinds, I stumbled across the photo. The image was grainy, my phone's camera always seemed to struggle in low light, but the words were still legible: happiness. Sold in glass jars. Call today. Something about those bold letters tugged at me. It wasn't just the absurdity of selling happiness like jam or pickles, it was the audacity of it. Who would even think to package something as intangible as happiness? And who would be gullible enough to buy it? The idea made me laugh out loud, though part of me couldn't help but wonder if there was some kind of deeper meaning behind it. Maybe it was performance art. Or maybe someone was just trying to make ends meet by peddling whimsy. My wife, Claire, walked into the kitchen then, her hair damp from the shower and tied up in a messy bun. She glanced over my shoulder at the screen. "What's so funny?" I turned the phone toward her. "Found this on my way home yesterday." She squinted at the poster for a moment before letting out a small chuckle. "You're not seriously considering calling them, are you?" "Why not?" I said, only half joking. "Could be fun. Worst case scenario, they hang up on me." Claire rolled her eyes but didn't say anything more. She poured herself a mug of coffee and sat down across from me, pulling open her laptop. Our daughter, Lily, wandered in moments later, rubbing sleep from her eyes and clutching her stuffed rabbit. Morning chaos began its slow crescendo. But even amidst the noise, the clatter of dishes, Lily's demands for cereal, Claire asking where she'd left her keys, the thought lingered. What was being sold here? Was it a scam? A joke? Or could it actually work? Happiness felt like such an elusive thing these days. Between work stress, parenting challenges, and the endless grind of keeping everything running smoothly, I couldn't remember the last time I'd truly felt happy without having to force it. By mid-afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I found myself staring at the number on the poster again, memorizing the digits. It wasn't like I had anything urgent to do right then. Claire was at her yoga class, and Lily was napping upstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old floorboards settling. I grabbed my phone and dialed. The line rang twice before clicking over to a recorded message. A woman's voice, smooth and polished, came through the speaker. "Thank you for contacting PureJoy," she said warmly. "Your journey to lasting happiness begins now. Please leave your name and number, and one of our happiness consultants will reach out to you shortly." There was a beep, and I hesitated for a second before speaking. Hi. This is Ethan Carter. I saw your poster about happiness in jars. Yeah, I'm interested. Give me a call back whenever." I hung up feeling both ridiculous and oddly satisfied. Over the next hour, I tried to distract myself with chores, vacuuming, sorting mail, organizing the pantry, but my mind kept circling back to the call. Had I really expected anyone to answer live? Probably not. Still, the idea of waiting for their response filled me with a strange mix of anticipation and skepticism. When Lily woke up from her nap, I pushed thoughts of the mysterious poster aside and focused on playing blocks with her. By the time Claire came home, I'd almost forgotten about it entirely. Almost. 2 days passed before I heard back. I was sitting in traffic after another long day at work when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I debated ignoring it, it could have been a telemarketer, but something told me to answer. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Mr. Carter?" The voice on the other end was cheerful, professional. Definitely not automated this time. "This is Samantha from PureJoy. How are you today?" "I'm fine," I replied, caught off guard. "Thanks for calling." "It's my pleasure," Samantha said brightly. "So, I understand you're interested in learning more about our product?" Well, I hesitated. Now that I was face to face, so to speak, with someone representing this bizarre concept, I felt a little foolish. I guess I am. Though honestly, I'm not sure what to expect. Selling happiness in jars sounds unusual. Samantha laughed lightly, as if she'd heard this reaction countless times before. We get that a lot. But let me assure you, Mr. Carter, we take happiness very seriously. Our jars are crafted using cutting-edge neuroscience and age-old wisdom to provide customers with authentic, lasting joy. Cutting-edge neuroscience? I echoed, incredulous. In a jar? Absolutely, she said confidently. Each jar contains a proprietary blend of sensory triggers designed to stimulate positive neural pathways. Think of it as a shortcut to your brain's natural ability to experience happiness. Would you like to schedule a consultation? We offer personalized recommendations based on individual needs. A consultation? For happiness in a jar? This whole thing was starting to feel less like a quirky novelty and more like a cult recruitment pitch. But despite my reservations, or perhaps because of them, I found myself agreeing. Sure, I said finally. Why not? Wonderful. Samantha chirped. How does tomorrow evening sound? One of our consultants can visit your home at your convenience. I gave her my address, thanked her, and hung up. As I merged onto the highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped into something far stranger than I'd anticipated. That night, I told Claire about the call. Predictably, she raised an eyebrow. You're letting a stranger come into our house to sell you happiness in a jar? She asked skeptically. It's not a commitment, I defended. Just a consultation. Besides, don't you want to see what they're offering? No, she said flatly. I think we've got enough weirdness in our lives already. Still, she agreed to stick around during the visit, partly out of morbid curiosity and partly because she didn't trust me to handle it alone. I appreciated her support, even if she clearly thought I was wasting my time. The consultant arrived promptly at 7 o'clock the following evening. He was younger than I'd expected, probably in his late 20s, with neatly styled hair and an impeccably pressed suit. His name tag read Daniel, and he carried a sleek leather briefcase. Good evening, Mr. Carter, he said with a warm smile, extending his hand. Thank you for inviting me into your home. After introductions, Daniel set up shop at our dining room table. He opened his briefcase to reveal rows of small glass jars, each filled with colorful contents ranging from glittering powders to shimmering liquids. They looked like high-end cosmetics or artisanal spices, nothing remotely resembling happiness. These, Daniel explained, gesturing to the jars, are samples of our most popular blends. Each one is tailored to evoke specific emotions and experiences. For example, he picked up a jar containing golden flakes suspended in clear gel. This is our Sunshine Serenity blend. Designed to promote calmness and clarity, it's perfect for busy professionals like yourself. He went on to describe several others: a lavender-infused powder meant to inspire creativity, a swirling blue liquid intended to spark nostalgia, and a vibrant orange paste formulated to boost confidence. The science behind them sounded impressive, involving terms like olfactory mapping and neuroplasticity enhancement. Yet the more he talked, the more skeptical I became. And how exactly do you use these? Claire interjected, crossing her arms. Do you eat them? Sniff them? Rub them on your skin? All of the above, Daniel replied smoothly. Our products engage multiple senses simultaneously for maximum impact. Simply follow the instructions included with each jar, and you'll begin experiencing results within minutes. Minutes? That sounded too good to be true. And yet, there was something undeniably compelling about the presentation. The jars themselves were beautiful, almost hypnotic in their perfection. Even Claire seemed momentarily entranced. What's the catch? She asked finally, narrowing her eyes. There has to be one. Daniel smiled patiently. No catch, Mrs. Carter. just a commitment to improving your quality of life. Of course, our premium blends come at a premium price point, but many customers find the investment well worth it. Ah, there it was. Money. Somehow, I'd known it would come down to that. How much are we talking? I asked. For a starter kit, including 3 custom-selected jars, a usage guide, and lifetime access to our happiness hotline, the cost is $499. $499. For jars of, whatever this stuff was. Part of me wanted to laugh, to tell Daniel thanks but no thanks and send him packing. But another part, the tired, overwhelmed part, couldn't help wondering if maybe, just maybe, it might actually work. Before I could decide, Claire spoke up. Absolutely not, she said firmly. Ethan, this is insane. We're not spending $500 on glitter and snake oil. She's right, I admitted reluctantly. Sorry, Daniel. Thanks for coming by, but I don't think this is for us. To his credit, Daniel didn't seem offended. If anything, he looked almost amused. That's perfectly understandable, he said, packing up his briefcase. But before you dismiss us entirely, consider this: happiness isn't always easy to find. Sometimes, it helps to have a little guidance. With that cryptic remark, he handed me his card and left. For the rest of the week, I couldn't stop thinking about the jars. Their colors, their textures, the promises they represented. What if they really did work? What if happiness could be bottled and sold, just like any other commodity? And then there was Daniel's final comment: sometimes, it helps to have a little guidance. It stuck with me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. Guidance. Was that all I needed? Or was I grasping at straws, desperate for a solution to problems I hadn't fully admitted to myself? Whatever the answer, one thing was certain: the idea of happiness in a jar wasn't going away anytime soon. The word "stuck" echoed in my mind as I walked, my shoes scuffing against the cracked pavement. It wasn't just the monotony of work or the endless cycle of household chores that weighed on me, it was deeper than that. It was the sense that somewhere along the way, I had stopped being the person I once imagined myself to be. The Ethan who dreamed of adventure, who felt alive under wide-open skies and foreign sunsets, seemed like a distant memory now. In his place stood someone else entirely, a man tethered to routines, obligations, and expectations. As I turned onto my street, the sight of our modest house greeted me. It was cozy enough: a white picket fence, flower boxes Claire insisted on planting every spring, but it lacked the vibrancy I'd envisioned for myself years ago. Back then, I thought happiness would come naturally, almost effortlessly. I believed life was something you chased, not something you settled into. Now, though, happiness felt more like an elusive bird perched just out of reach, taunting me with its fleeting glimpses before flitting away again. Inside, the house buzzed with familiar sounds: Claire humming softly in the kitchen, Lily giggling as she played with her dolls on the living room floor. They were the soundtrack of my days, comforting yet unchanging. For a moment, I allowed myself to lean into the warmth of their presence, letting it wash over me like sunlight breaking through clouds. But even that comfort couldn't fully mask the nagging emptiness beneath. Claire glanced up when I entered. "Hey," she said, smiling briefly before returning her attention to chopping vegetables. "You're home early." "Yeah," I replied, setting my bag down by the door. I figured I'd take advantage of Friday traffic, or lack thereof. She nodded distractedly, clearly focused on dinner prep. I watched her for a moment, marveling at how effortlessly she moved between tasks. Cooking, cleaning, parenting, she juggled everything with a grace I envied. Part of me wondered if she ever felt the same restlessness I did. Did she lie awake at night thinking about the dreams she'd shelved? Or had she found contentment in the rhythm of our lives? Lily ran up to me then, tugging at my sleeve. "Daddy, will you play with me?" Her bright eyes pulled me out of my reverie. I forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart." What are we playing? Princess Castle, she declared, dragging me toward her pile of toys. As I sat cross-legged on the carpet, building towers from plastic blocks and pretending to fend off invisible dragons, I tried to push aside the heaviness in my chest. This was what mattered, wasn't it? These small, ordinary moments with my family? Yet no matter how hard I tried to convince myself otherwise, I couldn't shake the feeling that something vital was missing. That evening, after Lily went to bed and Claire retreated to the couch with a book, I found myself staring at Daniel's business card. It sat on the kitchen counter where I'd left it, untouched since the consultation. The sleek font and polished logo mocked me silently, a reminder of the absurdity, and possibility, I'd encountered just days earlier. What harm could it do, really, to try one of those jars? Even if it didn't work, at least I'd have the satisfaction of knowing I'd explored every option. And maybe, just maybe, it would work. Maybe happiness wasn't as intangible as I'd convinced myself it was. Maybe it could be captured, distilled, and poured into a jar like liquid gold. Before I could second-guess myself, I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the card. Samantha answered on the second ring, her voice as cheerful as ever. "Hello, Mr. Carter. How can PureJoy assist you today?" I hesitated, suddenly unsure of how to phrase what I wanted. "I'm interested in purchasing one of your jars. Just one, to start." There was a pause, followed by a delighted laugh. "Excellent choice. Let's find the perfect blend for you. Can you tell me a little about what you're hoping to achieve?" Well, I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling oddly vulnerable. "I guess I'm looking for something that'll help me feel unstuck. Like, give me some clarity or motivation. Something to remind me why I'm doing all this." Samantha hummed thoughtfully. "Ah, I see. Our Horizon Glow blend might be just what you need. It's designed to inspire forward momentum and renewed purpose. Would you like to give it a try?" "Sure," I said, surprising myself with how quickly I agreed. "How much is it?" "For a single jar, the cost is $149, plus shipping." $149. For a jar of glitter and promises. It was ridiculous. Completely irrational. But as I handed over my credit card information, a strange sense of hope bubbled up inside me. If nothing else, buying this jar meant I was taking action. I was refusing to accept stagnation, even if the solution seemed unconventional. The package arrived 2 days later, wrapped in bubble wrap and tucked inside a plain brown box. I waited until everyone was asleep before opening it, half expecting disappointment but also harboring a flicker of anticipation. Inside was a small glass jar filled with shimmering silver powder. A label on the lid read, "Horizon Glow," and beneath it, instructions: inhale deeply 3 times daily, preferably in natural light. I unscrewed the lid cautiously and caught a whiff of something faintly metallic, like rain-soaked earth. It wasn't unpleasant, exactly, just unusual. Following the directions, I held the jar close to my face and breathed in slowly. The scent intensified, filling my lungs with a cool, tingling sensation. For a brief moment, I felt lighter, as though a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had lifted slightly. Over the next few days, I incorporated the ritual into my routine. Each morning, I'd step outside with the jar, inhaling deeply while the sun warmed my skin. At lunchtime, I'd retreat to a quiet corner of the office and repeat the process. By bedtime, I'd sit by the window, watching the stars emerge as I took my final breaths of the day. At first, nothing extraordinary happened. My spreadsheets remained dull, my commute still dragged on endlessly, and the laundry continued to pile up. But gradually, subtle shifts began to occur. Colors seemed brighter, sounds more vivid. Conversations with coworkers carried an ease they hadn't before. Even mundane tasks felt less burdensome, as though I were approaching them with fresh eyes. Then came the dreams. They started subtly, a flash of golden light here, a whisper of wind there. But soon, the visions became clearer, more insistent. I found myself standing on vast plains under endless skies, walking along deserted beaches where waves lapped gently at my feet. Sometimes, I saw faces, people I recognized but couldn't quite place, their expressions warm and encouraging. Other times, I simply felt a profound sense of belonging, as though I'd stumbled upon a truth I'd forgotten long ago. These dreams weren't fleeting, they lingered, haunting me during waking hours. They stirred memories of the adventures I'd once dreamed of, the road trips, the backpacking journeys, the freedom I'd craved but never pursued. With each passing night, the pull grew stronger, urging me to break free from the constraints of my current life. One morning, I woke with tears streaming down my face. Not because I was sad, but because I finally understood what had been missing all along. Happiness wasn't something you could buy, bottle, or chase. It was a state of being, a connection to something greater than yourself. And if I wanted to reclaim it, I needed to make a change. But change wasn't easy. Especially when the people you love depended on you staying exactly where you were. The Starbucks parking lot was bustling when I arrived, cars pulling in and out as people ducked into the cafe for their caffeine fixes. I parked near the entrance, glancing at my watch. She, or whoever she was already 5 minutes late. My fingers tapped nervously against the steering wheel as doubts crept back in. What exactly had I signed up for? Was this some kind of scam? A prank? Or worse, something more sinister? Just as I was about to leave, a beat-up silver hatchback pulled into the space beside me. The driver's side door opened, and a woman stepped out. She looked younger than I expected, probably in her early 30s, with messy auburn hair tied into a loose bun and wearing an oversized flannel shirt over ripped jeans. There was something disarming about her casual demeanor, like she didn't have a care in the world. "Ethan?" she asked, leaning down to peer through my open window. "That's me," I replied cautiously. "And you are?" "Mara," she said with a grin, holding up a small glass jar wrapped in brown paper. "Your happiness awaits." Despite myself, I chuckled. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," she countered, opening my car door and sliding into the passenger seat without waiting for an invitation. Her boldness caught me off guard, but there was no hostility in her tone, just confidence. People complicate things way too much. Happiness isn't rocket science, it's just being present. Being connected. I eyed the jar skeptically. "So what's in it? Magic dust?" She laughed, unwrapping the package to reveal the jar inside. It was smaller than I'd imagined, barely the size of a jam container, filled with swirling golden flakes suspended in a clear gel. Unlike Daniel's polished presentation, this one felt raw, almost homemade. Scratched onto the lid in permanent marker were the words, "For Ethan." "No magic dust," she said, handing it to me. "Just memories." "Memories?" I echoed, turning the jar over in my hands. The contents shimmered faintly in the sunlight streaming through the windshield. "What does that mean?" "It means," Mara explained, crossing her arms and settling back into the seat, "that happiness isn't something you can manufacture or buy, it's something you've already experienced. These jars help you reconnect with those moments. They're reminders of who you are and what matters most to you." Her explanation sounded poetic, maybe even plausible, but skepticism lingered. "How does it work? Do I sniff it? Drink it? Rub it on my temples?" "All of the above, depending on how you feel drawn to use it," she shrugged. "There's no right or wrong way. Just trust your instincts." I stared at the jar, torn between dismissing her claims outright and indulging in the possibility that she might be onto something. Finally, I asked, "Why me? Why go through all this trouble for someone who saw a poster stapled to a telephone pole?" Mara tilted her head, studying me with sharp green eyes. "Because you called. Most people see weird ads like mine and laugh them off. But you reached out. That tells me you're looking for something real. Something deeper than what life's been giving you lately. Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. How could she know? Maybe she didn't. Maybe it was just a sales pitch honed from years of practice. Still, the truth in her observation stung. What makes you think this will actually work? I pressed, trying to keep my voice steady. How do I know this isn't just another gimmick? You don't, she admitted frankly. But here's the thing, happiness isn't about guarantees. It's about taking risks. Trying new things. Stepping outside your comfort zone. If you want proof before you leap, you'll never move forward. Her candor surprised me. There was no hard sell, no pressure to commit. Just honesty, and maybe a little bit of wisdom. And if it doesn't work? I asked quietly. Then you wasted $20, she said with a shrug. Big deal. Life's too short to let fear stop you from trying something different. $20. Compared to the $149 I'd spent on PureJoy's Horizon Glow, this seemed almost laughably cheap. Reluctantly, I handed her a crumpled bill from my wallet. She tucked it into her pocket without counting it, then leaned back with a satisfied smile. One last piece of advice, she said as she opened the car door. Don't overthink it. Let the jar guide you. And remember, happiness isn't something you find. It's something you create. With that, she slipped out of the car and disappeared into the crowd heading toward the Starbucks entrance. I sat there for a moment, staring at the jar in my lap, unsure whether I'd just made the best decision of my life, or the dumbest. That night, after everyone else was asleep, I decided to give Mara's jar a try. Sitting on the edge of the bathtub, I unscrewed the lid and peered inside. The golden flake sparkled faintly under the bathroom light, shifting lazily as though alive. Following her vague instructions, I closed my eyes and brought the jar to my nose, inhaling deeply. The scent was unlike anything I'd ever smelled before, a mix of saltwater, pine needles, and something faintly sweet, like caramelized sugar. It wasn't overwhelming, but it triggered something deep within me, a flutter of recognition that sent shivers down my spine. Memories began flooding back, unbidden and vivid. Standing barefoot on a beach at sunset, the waves lapping at my ankles as Amelia, then just a girlfriend, laughed beside me. Hiking through dense woods during college, backpack straps digging into my shoulders as I marveled at the towering trees around me. Driving cross-country with nothing but a map and a playlist of songs I hadn't heard in years, windows rolled down as wind whipped through my hair. Each memory carried its own emotion, joy, wonder, freedom, and together, they formed a tapestry of moments I'd forgotten or buried beneath layers of responsibility and routine. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as I realized how far I'd strayed from the person I used to be. When I finally opened my eyes, the room felt different. Not physically, the same tiled floor, the same flickering fluorescent light, but emotionally. Lighter. Brighter. As though the weight I'd carried for so long had loosened, if only slightly. I screwed the lid back on and set the jar on the sink counter, my heart pounding with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Whatever this was, it wasn't ordinary. And whatever path it led me down, I knew I couldn't turn back now. Over the next few days, I began carrying the jar with me everywhere I went. At first, I kept it hidden, afraid someone might see it and ask questions I couldn't answer. But gradually, I grew bolder, letting its presence ground me during moments of stress or doubt. At work, when spreadsheets blurred together and deadlines loomed ominously, I'd sneak away to a quiet corner and open the jar just a crack. The light would spill out, wrapping me in warmth and clarity. Tasks that once felt insurmountable suddenly became manageable. Conversations with coworkers flowed more easily, laughter coming naturally instead of forced. On the walk home, I'd pause beneath a tree or near a park bench, letting the jar's glow mingle with the fading sunlight. Each time, fragments of forgotten memories surfaced, moments of connection, creativity, and wonder. They weren't always happy memories, per se, but they reminded me of who I used to be before life's weight pressed down too heavily. Claire noticed the change in me, though she didn't comment directly. Instead, she smiled more often, teased me less about being distracted, and even suggested we take Lily to the zoo on Saturday, a rare family outing we hadn't done in months. For the first time in years, I felt present, not just physically, but emotionally. Engaged. Alive. But with each use of the jar, a nagging question lingered: what did Mara mean when she said I'd pay? And why had she given me something so extraordinary without demanding anything up front? One evening, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I decided to text her. We hadn't spoken since our meeting in the parking lot, and part of me wondered if she'd even respond. Me: hey. It's Ethan. The jar guy. Her: hey, Ethan. How's it going? Me: good. Better than good, actually. Thanks for, well, whatever this is. Her: told you it works. So what's up? Me: just wondering, about the payment thing. You said I'd pay. What did you mean? There was a long pause before her reply came through. Her: payment isn't always cash, Ethan. Sometimes it's choices. Sacrifices. Growth. You'll know when the time comes. Her response left me unsettled. Choices? Sacrifices? What exactly had I signed up for? Before I could ask more, she added. Her: enjoy the jar while it lasts. And remember, the light fades eventually. The screen went dark, leaving me staring at her final message. Fades? What happened when the light disappeared? Would the happiness vanish with it? Or would something else take its place? For the first time since acquiring the jar, I felt a flicker of fear. Whatever gift Mara had given me, it clearly came with strings attached. Strings I wasn't sure I wanted to untangle. Panic bubbled up in my chest as I stood there, rain soaking through my jacket and dripping from my hair. The jar in my pocket pulsed faintly, its glow steady but somehow colder now, like a distant star. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't possible. Apartments don't just change ownership overnight. Phones don't reset themselves without warning. And yet, here I was, homeless, disconnected, untethered. I stumbled back into the hallway, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. The building looked familiar, but something about it felt off. The carpet smelled wrong, faintly musty instead of the usual antiseptic cleanliness. The light fixtures buzzed with an irregular hum, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Even the air seemed heavier, pressing down on me like an invisible weight. Excuse me, I called out to a neighbor passing by, a woman I vaguely recognized from shared laundry days. Do you know what happened to the guy who lived in 33? She gave me a puzzled look. No one's lived there for months. It's been vacant since the last tenant moved out. Months? I echoed, incredulous. That can't be right. I've been living there for years. Her brow furrowed. Are you sure you're okay? You look pale. Before I could respond, she hurried away, leaving me alone in the corridor. My heart pounded as I realized the truth. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a coincidence or a misunderstanding. Something deeper, something far stranger, was at play. Desperate for answers, I left the building and wandered the streets aimlessly. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the cold seeped into my bones, making every step feel heavier than the last. My phone remained stubbornly blank, offering no lifeline to the life I thought I knew. No Amelia. No Lily. No Claire. Just silence. And then there was the jar. I pulled it out again, clutching it tightly in my hand. Its glow had dimmed slightly, though it still radiated a faint warmth. Was this connected? Had Mara's cryptic warnings about payment and fading light been more literal than I'd assumed? If so, what price was I paying now? As if in response to my thoughts, the jar began to shimmer more intensely, its light spilling over my fingers and illuminating the wet pavement beneath my feet. For a moment, I thought I saw shapes forming within the glow, faces, landscapes, fleeting glimpses of places I didn't recognize but somehow felt drawn to. Then, just as quickly, the visions vanished, leaving only the faint pulsing light. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, half expecting the jar to answer. Of course, it didn't. But the question lingered, echoing in my mind like a challenge I couldn't ignore. Eventually, I found myself outside a coffee shop, the same one where I'd met Mara weeks earlier. Whether by instinct or design, I pushed open the door and stepped inside, shaking off the rain as best I could. The warmth of the cafe enveloped me instantly, a stark contrast to the chill outside. I scanned the room, hoping against hope that Mara might be here, waiting with some kind of explanation. Instead, I spotted someone else entirely, Daniel, the consultant from PureJoy. He sat at a corner table, sipping a latte while scrolling through his phone. His suit was impeccable as always, his demeanor calm and composed. When he noticed me staring, he raised an eyebrow, then gestured for me to join him. "This is unexpected," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. "What brings you here?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I think something's wrong." Daniel studied me carefully, his expression unreadable. "Something, or someone, you mean?" His words sent a jolt through me. "You know about the jar." It wasn't a question, and Daniel didn't treat it as one. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Let's just say I'm familiar with certain phenomena." "Phenomena?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "My apartment's gone. My wife, my whole life, is gone. And this damn jar keeps glowing like it's mocking me. What the hell is going on?" To my surprise, Daniel didn't react with skepticism or disbelief. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd already suspected. "The jars are conduits," he explained. "Gateways, if you will. They tap into memories, emotions, even alternate realities. But they come with consequences." "Consequences?" I demanded. "Like what?" "Losing everything I care about." "It's not about loss," Daniel corrected gently. "It's about perspective. The jars force you to confront truths you've been avoiding. Sometimes, that means letting go of things that no longer serve you. Other times," he trailed off, his gaze shifting to the glowing object in my hand. "Other times, it means stepping into a new reality entirely." "A new reality? Is that what's happening to me? Am I losing my mind?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "You're evolving. The jar has opened a door for you, a chance to redefine your happiness on your own terms. But evolution isn't painless. It requires sacrifice. Growth." His words made a twisted sort of sense, though they offered little comfort. If this was growth, it felt more like unraveling. Like the fabric of my world was being pulled apart thread by thread, leaving me standing in the wreckage. "What happens when the light fades?" I asked quietly. Daniel's smile was both sympathetic and enigmatic. "That depends on you. Will you cling to what you've lost, or will you embrace what lies ahead?" I left the cafe with more questions than answers, the jar clutched tightly in my hand. Outside, the rain had stopped, replaced by an eerie twilight that painted the city in shades of gray and gold. Each step felt heavier now, not just because of the weight of uncertainty but because I could feel the pull, the inexorable tug toward whatever lay beyond the fading glow. The jar pulsed once, twice, then dimmed further, its light growing fainter with each passing second. I stopped walking, staring down at it as fear and determination warred within me. Whatever came next, I realized, was entirely up to me. And for the first time in a long time, that thought filled me with something akin to hope. Desperation drove me to the library, a place I hadn't visited in years but still remembered from quieter times in my life. If there was anywhere I might find answers, or at least some semblance of control, it was here. The quiet hum of fluorescent lights and the faint smell of old books provided a strange comfort as I logged onto a public computer. I started with the basics, searching for my name online. Nothing. No social media profiles, no LinkedIn page, not even a mention in local news archives. Panic clawed at my throat as I typed in variations of my name, hoping for anything, a yearbook photo, a college essay, a forgotten blog post, but came up empty every time. Next, I tried looking up PureJoy and Mara's number, hoping for clues about the jars. Again, nothing. No website, no reviews, no trace of the mysterious woman who'd handed me the glowing light. Even Daniel's polished business card had disappeared from my wallet, leaving behind only a faint imprint where it had once rested. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut: I was alone. Completely and utterly alone. Whatever force had stripped away my apartment, my job, and my family now seemed intent on erasing every record of my existence. All that remained was the jar, and the sinking feeling that its glow was both a lifeline and a countdown. As the hours dragged on, I found myself drawn back to the streets, wandering aimlessly through neighborhoods I barely recognized. Buildings looked familiar yet alien, their shapes distorted as though viewed through warped glass. People passed by without acknowledging me, their faces blurred and indistinct. The city itself felt wrong, like a photocopy of the place I'd called home. At one point, I stopped in front of a mirror-like storefront window, staring at my reflection. The man staring back looked older somehow, his eyes hollow and haunted. His clothes were soaked and disheveled, his hair plastered to his forehead. For a moment, I wondered if he was really me, or if I'd become someone else entirely. "You're losing it," I muttered under my breath, clutching the jar tighter. Its warmth pulsed against my palm, grounding me in the present even as everything else slipped further out of reach. Another text buzzed in. Keep moving. You'll figure it out." Me, figure what out? Who are you? Just a guide. Like the jar. Her words infuriated me. A guide? She was tearing my world apart and calling herself a guide? I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the street, but instead, I forced myself to breathe. Losing control wouldn't help, not when I needed clarity more than ever. By nightfall, exhaustion set in, dragging me toward a park bench where I collapsed, cradling the jar in my lap. Its glow had dimmed significantly, now little more than a faint flicker. Each pulse felt weaker than the last, as though the light were slowly bleeding out of existence. I stared at it, torn between terror and resignation. What happens when you fade? I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. Do I disappear too? A voice startled me from behind. Not unless you let it. I turned sharply to see Daniel standing there, umbrella in hand despite the clear sky. He looked the same as always, immaculate suit, composed demeanor, but his expression carried a weight I hadn't noticed before. "How do you keep finding me?" I demanded, anger bubbling beneath my fear. "I'm not the one doing the finding," he replied calmly, sitting beside me. "You are." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Daniel said, leaning forward slightly, "that the jar isn't just showing you memories or alternate realities. It's showing you choices. Paths you've taken, and paths you haven't. Every decision creates a ripple, shaping the world around you. Right now, those ripples are catching up to you. So what? I'm paying for my choices?" I shot back bitterly. "Is that why my life is disappearing?" "No," Daniel corrected gently. "You're being given a chance to rewrite them. To choose differently." His words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Rewrite my choices? Did he mean, start over? Leave behind the responsibilities, the routines, the people who defined my life? The idea was both terrifying and intoxicating. Freedom, true freedom, had always felt impossible within the confines of adulthood. Could the jar be offering me an escape? But at what cost? As if sensing my hesitation, Daniel added, "Change isn't easy. It requires letting go of what you know, even what you love, in order to embrace something new. The question is, are you ready?" I glanced down at the jar again, its light now barely visible. Whatever decision I made, it needed to happen soon. The thought of losing everything, the uncertainty, the isolation, terrified me. But so did the alternative, staying trapped in a life that no longer felt like mine. Before I could respond, another text lit up my phone. Time's running out." The jar pulsed one final time, its glow fading completely. Darkness enveloped me, thick and suffocating. For a moment, I thought I'd gone blind, or worse, ceased to exist altogether. Then, slowly, the world shifted. Colors returned, sharper and brighter than before. Sounds grew clearer, richer. And when I looked around, I realized I was no longer sitting on a park bench in a crumbling version of my city. I was standing on a beach, waves lapping at my feet, the horizon stretching endlessly before me. The air smelled of salt and freedom, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I took a deep breath, and smiled. Whatever came next, I decided, would be on my terms. I stood there for a long moment, barefoot in the sand, clutching the now empty jar in my hand. Its glass surface was cool against my palm, devoid of the warmth and glow that had once defined it. Whatever magic, or force, it had contained was gone, leaving behind only an ordinary object. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to let go of it. It was the last tether to everything I'd lost, and everything I might still gain. Behind me, the sound of footsteps crunched softly against the wet sand. I turned, half expecting to see Mara or Daniel, but instead, it was a stranger. A woman, perhaps in her late 30s, with wind-tousled hair and a weathered leather jacket slung over one shoulder. She carried herself with an air of quiet confidence, as though she belonged here more than anyone else. "You made it," she said simply, her voice carrying the faintest trace of a smile. "Made what?" I asked, my own voice rough from disuse. "Where am I?" She gestured toward the horizon, where the ocean met the sky in a seamless blend of color. "Somewhere between who you were and who you're meant to be." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. They sounded eerily similar to the cryptic advice I'd received from both Mara and Daniel, but this time, they resonated differently. Instead of confusion or frustration, I felt clarity. As though the pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized I'd been assembling were finally clicking into place. "What happens now?" I asked, my gaze drifting back to the jar. "Is this some kind of afterlife? Am I dead?" The woman laughed softly, shaking her head. "Not quite. Think of it more as a reset. A chance to start fresh without the weight of old choices holding you down." "But why me?" I pressed, turning to face her fully. Why did I have to lose everything, the apartment, my job, Amelia, Claire, Lily, all of it, to get here? Her expression softened, and for the first time, I saw something akin to empathy in her eyes. Because sometimes, letting go is the hardest part of moving forward. You've spent years building a life based on expectations, society's, your family's, even your own. But somewhere along the way, you stopped asking yourself if that life made you happy. She waved a hand at the vast expanse around us. "This is your opportunity to find out." Her explanation didn't ease the ache in my chest, the grief for everything I'd left behind, but it gave me a framework to understand it. Maybe happiness wasn't about reclaiming what I'd lost, maybe it was about creating something entirely new. As we walked along the shoreline, the woman introduced herself as Evelyn. She explained that she was one of many guides tasked with helping people navigate these liminal spaces, the moments between worlds, identities, and lives. Her role wasn't to dictate outcomes but to offer perspective, much like the jars themselves. The light inside the jar wasn't just a tool, she said as we paused near a cluster of tide pools glittering in the fading sunlight. It was a reflection of your potential. Every memory it showed you, every emotion it evoked, was a piece of who you could become if you chose to embrace change. And if I hadn't? I asked quietly, staring at the empty jar in my hand. Evelyn shrugged. Then you'd have stayed exactly where you were. Safe, predictable, stuck. Her bluntness stung, but it also rang true. Staying in my old life would have meant continuing to ignore the restlessness gnawing at me, pretending that contentment was enough. And while I missed Amelia, Claire, and Lily desperately, I couldn't deny the exhilaration coursing through me now, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. So what do I do now? I asked, looking out at the endless horizon. That's up to you, Evelyn replied, stepping back slightly. You can stay here, explore this world, and build a new life. Or you can return to the one you left behind, but not as the same person. Once you've seen what lies beyond, you can't unsee it. Her words lingered in the salty breeze, heavy with implication. Returning home would mean facing the consequences of my disappearance, explaining my absence, rebuilding relationships, confronting the reality I'd abandoned. Staying here, on the other hand, offered freedom but at the cost of severing those ties forever. For a moment, I considered staying. The idea of starting over without obligations, without the weight of past decisions, was intoxicating. But then I thought of Claire's laugh, Lily's tiny hands clutching mine, the quiet comfort of sharing a meal with someone who knew me better than I knew myself. Imperfect as it was, that life was still mine. And maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to make it work. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. I want to go back. Evelyn smiled, unsurprised. Are you sure? There's no going back after this, not really. I'm sure, I said firmly. But I need to know, will I remember all of this? The jar, Mara, Daniel, you? She nodded. Yes. The memories will stay with you, like echoes. They'll remind you of what you've learned, and what you stand to lose if you don't act on it. With that, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small vial filled with shimmering liquid. Drink this, she instructed. It'll take you home. I hesitated, staring at the vial. Will I see you again? Probably not, she admitted. But trust me, you won't need me anymore. Taking a deep breath, I uncapped the vial and drank its contents in one swift motion. The taste was sharp and metallic, like lightning captured in liquid form. As the sensation spread through my body, the world around me began to blur, dissolving into a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on my couch. The room was dimly lit, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. For a moment, I wondered if the entire experience had been a fever dream, but then I noticed the jar sitting on the coffee table, its lid slightly askew. Beside it lay a folded note. Happiness isn't found in escape, it's built in connection. Don't waste this second chance. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as I read the words. Everything I'd experienced, the unraveling of my life, the visions, the conversations with Mara, Daniel, and Evelyn, felt achingly real. And somehow, knowing that I'd chosen to return made it all the more meaningful. Over the next few weeks, I began making changes, not drastic ones, but enough to shift the trajectory of my life. I started taking weekend trips with Claire and Lily, rediscovering the joy of unplanned adventures. I cut back on overtime at work, prioritizing evenings spent playing board games or reading bedtime stories. Most importantly, I allowed myself to dream again, not just for others, but for me. The jar remained on the shelf above my desk, empty but symbolic. It served as a reminder that happiness wasn't something you could bottle or buy, it was something you created, moment by moment, choice by choice. And while I never saw Mara, Daniel, or Evelyn again, their lessons stayed with me. Life wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but for the first time in years, I felt alive. Truly, deeply alive. And sometimes, that was enough.